Great to see you, everyone. This week in CA Football, Week 11 edition is here. I'm Bobby Broyles along with Rob Washburn. We brought it up last week, Rob. It is remembered in November time for a lot of teams in the league, and some started making their case this past Saturday for the postseason. But first, let's revisit a first in CA Football as William & Mary defeated Elon in 5 overtimes in that new overtime format.
Yeah, it was a historic and wild day as Elon and William & Mary played the longest game in their program's history. After the Phoenix kicked a game-time field goal with 1:35 left in regulation, neither team was able to score in the first 2 overtime periods. Both teams found the end zone in the third overtime, but were then unable to convert on a required 2-point conversion try. After a scoreless fourth period, a new college football rule, which places the ball on the 3-yard line, came into play. The Tribe's Owen Wright ran it in for a 2-point play, and then William & Mary's Ryan Poole followed with a breakup of an Elon pass, giving the Tribe its first conference win in dramatic fashion, 31-29. Elsewhere around the CA, New Hampshire rallied from a 20-7 halftime deficit to beat Villanova 28-20 and improved to 4-1 in the CAA. Freshman Max Brosmer threw a pair of TD passes to Dylan Lave, and the UNH defense pitched a shutout over the final 33 minutes. Richmond also moved to 4-1 in CAA play as the Spiders played their most complete game of the season in defeating Stony Brook 30-10. Quarterback Joe Mancuso accounted for 406 yards of offense and 4 touchdowns, while the Spiders' defense kept the Seawolves scoreless in the second half. Towson and Delaware delivered another classic in their storied rivalry, with the Tigers earning a 31-24 win. Towson receiver Caleb Smith had a career day, making 9 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown. Maine continued its climb up the standings with a 47-31 victory at Albany. Freshman Joe Fagiano threw 4 more TD passes as the Black Bears won their second straight league game. Finally, Rhode Island got its first victory at renovated Meade Stadium by pulling away from Merrimack 42-14. Safety Malik Gaffick had a monster performance with 14 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, and a 30-yard pick six.
As we turn the page to the second Saturday in November, we start with a big top 25 matchup in CA. Title implications could be on the line in this one. In Harrisonburg, as JMU comes off the bye week to host New Hampshire at 3:30 on Masson, SNY, and FlowFootball.com.
Yeah, this contest features 2 programs that are no strangers to playing big games in November. New Hampshire has won 5 of its last 6, mostly behind a veteran defense that's allowing less than 17 points per game. The Wildcats have forced 13 turnovers in the past 5 games, including 3 huge interceptions in last week's victory over Villanova. That was the formula for UNH in last year's 35-24 win over the Dukes, when they were able to force 6 turnovers. Now, offensively, the Wildcats will try to establish a running game against JMU's top-ranked defense to set up play action for quarterback Max Brosmer, who is coming off that career-best 276-yard, 3-touchdown passing performance against Villanova. Now, JMU is the lone unbeaten team in CA football and is riding the momentum of an 8-game winning streak, which includes 4 victories over nationally ranked opponents in the past 5 weeks. Offensively, the Dukes feature the league's top rushing attack at 238 yards per game, and quarterback Ben DiNucci has been one of the most efficient passers in FCS, having thrown for over 200 yards and at least 1 touchdown in 7 of his past 8 games. JMU's defense has taken its play to a different level in recent weeks, holding 4 of the last 6 opponents to less than 270 yards, recording 24 sacks in the past 5 contests, and forcing 9 turnovers in the last 3 games. As I said at the outset, both of these programs are used to playing meaningful games with playoff implications in November, and it should be a great atmosphere Saturday at Bridgeport Stadium.
At 2 o'clock on FlowFootball.com, Towson will be on the road to take on Stony Brook, and this is a huge game for each team, Rob, as they want to make a case for a playoff bid in a few weeks.
Yeah, both of these teams come into Saturday's game with identical 5-4 overall records and 2-3 marks in the CAA, so the winner will certainly get a big boost to their playoff resume. Towson's coming off a big 31-24 victory over Delaware. The Tigers are at their best when they are balanced offensively, and that happened against the Hens, with quarterback Tom Flacco completing 74% of his passes for 294 yards, and the duo of V.D. Thanrat and Adrian Feliz-Platt combining for 125 yards on the ground, with Thanrat reaching the end zone 3 times. Now, the Tigers' defense gave up 400 yards last week, but came up with a big stop late to secure the victory. All-CA linebacker Robert Hayward had a great afternoon with 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a couple of sacks. Stony Brook needs to bounce back from a tough 30-10 setback at Richmond last week. The Seawolves feature one of the top rushing attacks in FCS, but were held to a season-low 72 yards last week. Tyson Lawton had run for over 100 yards in the 3 previous games, and getting him going helped set up the play-action opportunities down the field for dynamic quarterback Tykel Fields, who has thrown for over 200 yards in 5 of his past 7 games. Stony Brook's defense has given up a lot of yards over the past month and will need to step up against a talented quarterback like Flacco. One bright spot is that the Seawolves have forced multiple turnovers in 3 of the past 4 contests, and that could be a big key in this game. These teams have split their past 6 meetings, so expect another competitive contest.
Yep. Also at 2 o'clock on FlowFootball.com, Elon will be at home once again Saturday as the Phoenix play host to the Maine Black Bears. Both teams sitting at 4-5, and both teams trying to stay alive in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, Elon's tough 5 overtime loss to William & Mary snapped the 2-game winning streak, and they're going to need to rebound quickly and leave that game behind against a Maine team that's riding the momentum from 2 straight victories. Quarterback Davis Cheek had one of his best days through the air, passing for 247 yards and 2 TDs against the Tribe, but the Phoenix struggled to get its running game going. Elon is 4-0 this season when rushing for at least 150 yards, but hasn't won when they've been below that total, so keep an eye on that stat. Defensively, Greg Leaks continued his outstanding season with a career-high 12 tackles and a huge forced fumble in overtime last week. He still leads FCS with 7 interceptions, and will be fun to see which member of Maine's talented receiving group he shadows on the day. Maine scored 23 unanswered points in the third quarter and picked up a convincing 47-31 victory at Albany. The Black Bears have had over 420 yards of offense and have averaged 42 points in the past 3 weeks. Freshman quarterback Joe Fagiano has thrown 11 TD passes over the past 3 games, and 4 different receivers have had at least 100 yards receiving during that stretch. Maine's defense was able to put pressure on Albany last week with 5 sacks and 3 forced turnovers that led to scores. All-CA defensive end Keon Whitaker has 6.5 tackles for loss and 2 forced fumbles in the past 2 games.
Earlier in the day at 1 o'clock, it will be Villanova returning home to take on Richmond, and 2 teams trending in opposite directions at the moment, Rob, but a win could go a long way for their opportunities in the postseason.
Yeah, Richmond has vaulted its way back into CAA title and playoff contention with 4 straight conference victories, and the Spiders may have turned in their best effort of the year in last week's 30-10 triumph over Stony Brook. Quarterback Joe Mancuso has been the leader of the offense, throwing for 825 yards and 6 touchdowns and running for 300 yards and 4 scores in the past 3 games. Top receiver Keaston Fuller has caught a TD pass in 5 straight games, and Charlie Fessler is coming off a career-high 11 receptions for 147 yards against Stony Brook. Richmond ranks 3rd in the CAA in total defense, and last week held the Seawolves to a season-low 72 yards on the ground. The Spiders have also gotten after the quarterback, recording multiple sacks in 6 straight games. Now, Villanova suffered its 3rd straight loss in New Hampshire last week, but the Wildcats will try to get back on the winning track with 3 straight games at home to close the regular season. Quarterback Daniel Smith passed for 313 yards at UNH and contributed touchdowns through the air and on the ground, but was hurt by 3 interceptions. Receiver Shanga Hodge has become the go-to target for Smith, making 21 catches for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns over the past 3 weeks. Now, Villanova's defense continues to be led by linebacker Forrest Ryan, who tops the team with 79 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. The Wildcats forced 10 turnovers during their season-opening 6-game win streak, but have only gotten 2 in the past 3 games, so that's an area to keep an eye on.
Yep. Also at 1 o'clock on FlowFootball.com, Delaware will host Albany, and both teams coming off tough losses last Saturday and will be desperate for a win to keep playoff hopes alive as well.
Yeah, critical mistakes in the second half were the difference for Albany last week as they lost 47-31 to Maine, ending a 2-game winning streak. The Great Danes' passing attack continues to be one of the most prolific in the CAA as quarterback Jeff Undercuffler threw for 387 yards and 4 touchdowns against Maine and broke the school record for TD passes in a season with 28. For the 3rd time in the past 4 weeks, receivers Juwan Green and J.R. Reeves both went over the 100-yard mark, and Green set a school record with his 11th TD catch of the year. Albany's defense gave up over 400 yards for the 2nd week in a row after not doing that in the 4 prior games. A bright spot was Eli Menser setting a school record with 9.5 sacks, which is also tops in the CAA. Now, Delaware went back and forth in a 31-24 loss to Towson last week before a critical 4th down play came up a half yard short late in the game. The return of Nolan Henderson at quarterback gave the Blue Hens offense a lift as he passed for 240 yards and a touchdown and added 48 yards and a score on the ground. Delaware also got another impressive outing from Will Knight, who rushed for 96 yards and a touchdown at Towson and has 298 yards in the last 3 games. Blue Hens defense gave up over 450 yards last week, but was able to force 3 turnovers for the 2nd time in the past 3 games. Continuing that trend could be vital in slowing down that Albany offense.
And we wrap up at 1 o'clock on FlowFootball.com. And Cox, your view with Rhode Island traveling to William & Mary. Both these teams coming off a victory last Saturday.
Yeah, both William & Mary and Rhode Island are much better than their records would suggest, and both picked up much-needed victories last week. Offensively, this game features a contrast in styles. Rhode Island features the CA's top passing attack at 312 yards per game. Quarterback Vito Priori has thrown for over 200 yards in all 9 games and has 18 TD passes, while Aaron Parker tops the conference with 66 receptions and last week became the first Rhode Island receiver since 1994 to go over 1,000 receiving yards in a season. William & Mary is among the CA leaders in rushing and piled up a season-high 326 yards on the ground in last week's win over Elon. Owen Wright rushed for a career-high 113 yards on only 13 carries versus the Phoenix. Donovan Lester added 73, and quarterback Hollis Mathis is always a threat to break a big play with his feet. Rhode Island's defense has held its last 3 opponents to under 400 yards and last week forced a season-high 5 turnovers, including 2 fumble recoveries and a 30-yard pick six by Malik Gavick. William & Mary has also been solid defensively in the past 3 weeks, especially against the run. Gavin Johnson turned in a big game at Elon with 9 tackles and 3 sacks.
As always, folks, casports.com/live scores is your source for live scoring and in-game live stats throughout Week 11 of the college football season.
And, of course, you can continue to follow the league on our many social media platforms, such as facebook.com/CA Football and Twitter @CA Football using the hashtag CAFB.
Our on-campus crew was back on the road last weekend at Richmond. You can revisit their trip by following CA Football social media outlets and make sure to visit cafootball.com Thursday for our Going Deep feature on the Spiders.
Yeah, our crew had the pleasure of catching up with Richmond defensive lineman Kobe Turner, who not only excels on the field as one of the Spiders' top pass rushers, but also has amazing talent as both a singer and a musician. It's a story you won't want to miss.
That is it from us today. Enjoy the games, everyone.